Morning, boys and girls. For those of you that didn't have an opportunity to meet with me this morning, our Google Meet failed to record. And so I wanted to go ahead and allow those of you who maybe were busy traveling or didn't have access to internet at the time to be able to get the things that all of the other kids in class today received. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little recording individually. These will probably not be how the notes will be going forward. I'm hoping to have all the glitches with the recording of Google Meets worked out by then. But so for today, we're just going to kind of do it in this format, and I'll upload it into Google Classroom, and hopefully you're seeing it now in that platform. So we're starting into Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is on multiplication. We've just completed Chapter 11, as you can recall last week. So as we move into Chapter 3, I'm hoping that this chapter will be somewhat easy for you since this is something that you have been practicing and working on since third grade. As we talked about last week, though, multiplication is something that it's a memorization. You have to remember those multiplication facts. So if you're a little rusty on those, you might want to take some time practicing that. The IXL is going to be a great platform to practice those multiplication facts. I'm going to start requiring you to do a certain number of minutes a week through IXL. We talked about that this morning in our Google Meet classroom. Make sure that you are doing it in the age-appropriate level, because I did receive notification today from IXL that we had some individuals working in a third grade level. Obviously, as fifth graders, we should be working in fifth grade level with the skills that are relative to fifth grade multiplication. So each week, I'm going to assign a certain amount of minutes for you to complete. And at the conclusion of that week, I will then log in and give you a classwork grade based off of how much you completed for that week. Again, it's practice. So I'm not looking at questions that you got right, questions that you got wrong, but I'm looking to see that you invested the time, that you worked hard to kind of practice some of these multiplication skills that are going to make this chapter easier for you in the long run. So going forward, we started class today with what we called a little bit of brain food. These are practice problems that I gave the kids to kind of look at, not necessarily working out and solving them, but answering, are these true or false statements? So we took time and kind of walked through each individual one. We noticed that in the very first problem, 6 times 3, our big question was, is 6 times 3 equal to 3 times 6? And as the kids realized, yes, that's a true statement. Those two things are equal to each other, because we have learned, given some of these properties that exist in math, that we can change the order of the numbers in a problem. And it's not going to change our outcome as long as the operation is the same. So in this particular situation, 6 times 3 would give us 18. And on the opposite side, if I reversed my numbers but still kept multiplication and have 3 times 6, I'm also going to receive 18. And so therefore, it makes this a true statement. If we move down to the next one, number 2, you will see in this particular problem, we have some multiplication, but we also have some addition. This kind of changes things. This doesn't fall necessarily into a specific property, because we don't have the exact math, the same math happening in each situation. So this is where we would follow something called order of operations, that PEMDAS that you've heard me refer to a couple of different times. But in this particular situation, if you try to work this out and get an answer for each side, you should realize that this would be a false statement, because 3 plus 5 would give us 8. And then if I bring down what's left, which is my multiplication sign of my 2, I would have 2 times 8, which would give me 16. So my answer on this side would have given me 16. So in case you didn't see what I just did, you'll notice I did my 3 plus my 5 first, which gave me an 8, and I brought down everything else that was left, and that's where my 16 came from. Now, if I go to the opposite side and I work what's inside the parentheses first, because PEMDAS tells me I have to do that, 6 times 3, or 2 times 3, gives me 6. But if I bring down my leftover stuff, which is the plus and the 5, I now have 11. So what's on the left side of the problem doesn't equal what's on the right side of the problem. So this would be a false statement. And we kind of worked through each one of these. So I'm going to let you kind of have time on your own to kind of work through those problems and determine, are these particular problems true or false statements? We actually didn't get through all 6 of them, but since you're working on your own time at your house, you may be able to pause the video and kind of watch and see if these are actually true or false statements, to kind of get your brain moving for the day. So it was just kind of some fun brain food that we did. And then we started class. So at this point, if you don't have your notebook in front of you, you need to go ahead and pause the video, go get it, and get something to write with, because you are going to take some notes today in today's class. All right, now that you're ready and to roll and you have all of the stuff that you need to take some notes for today, we're going to look at lesson 3.1, and these are our multiplication properties. There are 5 multiplication properties in multiplication. So we're going to look at each one of them, what they mean, and then have an example to match each of them. This is what you're going to want to put into your notebook, just like you would if you were in class with me right now. So the first property that we're going to observe is the property called the commutative property of multiplication. This should feel like a term that you've heard of before, because earlier in the year, we looked at this commutative property of addition. And so it's very similar to that property, but both of them basically tell us this information, that I can change the order of the factors, and that doesn't change the product. Now, what you have to remember is that a factor is a number that I use to multiply together. They're the numbers inside of a multiplication problem. We call those the factors. If this was an addition problem, the numbers that are inside an addition problem are called the add-ins. But in a multiplication problem, the numbers that I use to multiply are called factors. So I can take these factors and I can change the order of them, and the end result is that it would not change the product. The product is the answer to the multiplication problem. So like I always do with you in school, I give you an example to help you to kind of see what this actually means. And of course, it looks like I'm running into possible, oh, wait, maybe it's back. My computer looks like it's trying to freeze up on me, which might mean I have to close out and re-log back in, which isn't going to be fun, but I think that's what Miss Malone is going to have to possibly do. So let me log this out really quickly, and I'll come right back in so you can use this. You might have to kind of use this as time to get any of those notes that you were trying to get down, until I can get things back up and running. All right. This is what happens in land of virtual learning. All right, so let's try to get back to where we were. All right, this is where we were at. So we had just gotten down the definition for the commutative property of multiplication, and we were getting ready to look at an example. So this is the example that I was going to show you. So the 3 and the 4 in each of these problems, those are called the factors. So I have 3 times 4, and that's going to give me a product of 12. If I reverse that and come to the opposite side over here and put the 4 in front and now the 3 in the back, it doesn't matter. It's still going to give me a product of 12. And that's because of the rules of the commutative property of multiplication. Another property that we explored today, and these are, again, are things that you want to have in your notebook, because this is all going to be very helpful for you throughout this chapter, is the associative property of multiplication. And as I shared with the kids, these are your notes. So if you want to abbreviate things, kind of like Miss Malone did, I kind of took the big word property and the big word multiplication, and I abbreviated, I shortened those words just because it's a lot of stuff to write in your notebook. And when our class is only 30 minutes long, we do have to kind of like move a little bit quicker. So This associative property of multiplication, here's what this property tells us. And again, you might kind of feel like this is somewhat familiar because when we did this with the addition property, it kind of had the same meaning. But what it says is that we can change the grouping of the factors, and the groups are those parentheses. So when you see the word group, you want to think of the picture of a parenthesis. You can change the parentheses around, and you can change what's inside those parentheses, those factors, but it's not going to change the product. Okay, so here's an example of what we mean by that. So if I gave you an example like 2 times 6, and I chose to try to put things in different colors, so hopefully it would stand out a little bit better for you. So on the left-hand side of the problem, you have 2 times 6 in parentheses. What's on the outside is the leftover, the multiplication sign, and the 3. If I look on the opposite side, you see I have all the same factors. I have a 2, I have a 6, and I have a 3, but this time my parentheses moved. I grouped them differently. So I have my 6 and my 3 inside of my parentheses now. But as we keep moving through the problem, we know we have to work those parentheses first. So over here, my 2 times my 6 is going to give me a 12, which is why I drew that arrow pointing towards that 12 to show that's where 12 came from. On the opposite side over here, when I do 6 times 3 first, though, I get a product of 18. So that gives me 2 different numbers. But here's the really cool thing with math. If I bring down the other things that are left over on both sides, even though I had different factors, I still get the same product on both sides, because 12 times 3 is 36 and 2 times 18 is also 36. So even though I move those factors around, I'm still going to get that same answer. And that's what's really cool with this math. I could even move those numbers all around. I could put 3 in here with 2. And I could do 2 times 3 and then have times 6, and I would still get 36. And that's because of the associative property of multiplication. Okay. Now remember, there's 5 of these, and we've only covered 2. Now, the other classes didn't get much further than this, but one class did get to the 3rd property, and that property was the identity property of multiplication. Again, I know I'm moving pretty quick here, but because you're watching this as a recording, you have the option to pause the video and then pick back up once you've gotten all the information written down. So the identity property of multiplication is the product of one and a number is the same as that number. Now, kind of the trick that I told the kids, the thing with these properties is so much of this is memorization. A lot of math plays with numbers, but sometimes math does have vocab words and has properties and has definitions we have to remember. So a way to kind of train our brain to remember the identity property, even though this is an I, it kind of looks like the number 1. The identity property is always the property that plays with the number 1. So in this example, we see that anytime I multiply a number by 1, I'm always going to get that other number. So an example would be something like this. I'm going to have 8 times 1, which gives me 8. But if I reverse those factors and do 1 times 8, I'm still going to get 8. So the product of 1 is always going to be that other number, okay? And there was an identity property also in addition, but this one's for multiplication because we're playing with chapter 3, which is all about multiplication. So at this point, I kind of shared with the kids, this was about as far as we got because we only had a 30-minute class period today. So your job today, we didn't make it through all of the individual properties. And so therefore, you don't really have any activity that you can work on today for me. You just got to make sure that you have all of your notes written down, that you understand up to this point those 3 properties. Tomorrow we will pick up with the rest of the properties. We'll do some practice problems, and then you'll have a classwork assignment that you will have to complete at the end of our class tomorrow. But for today, you really kind of have a little bit of a free day and you don't have any additional work that you have to do following this video. The only extra thing that you would maybe need to do is I did on Friday give everybody some IXL math that I talked about at the front of this video where you had to complete 20 minutes. And I'm going to be logging in at the end of the day today to make sure that all of you completed your 20 minutes of IXL practice. Right now, I can log in and see that many of you have not done any of it. Many of you have 0 minutes. Some of you only have 15 minutes. If you do more than 20 minutes, I'm giving you bonus points. So any more than 20 minutes, you'll get 105. Any less than 20 minutes, your grade will be reflected based off of how many minutes that you do. So make sure that you get that finished. You had that assignment given to you on Friday. It's now Monday, so that's 4 days ago when that assignment was given. But because this is the first time that we've really done this, I'm going to allow everybody the rest of the day today to get those 20 minutes finished. So since you don't have any extra math to do, use this time to finish that IXL so that when I log in later today, I'm able to see that every 82 fifth graders has done their 20 minutes of IXL. And again, you got to look for the time in IXL. I know you can't just set a timer on your microwave and use that time because that may not match the time that's in IXL. Make sure you have 20 minutes completed there. If you have any questions about anything that we did today, send me an email. Otherwise, make sure these notes are in your notes, and I'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully, you can log back in with us then. Thanks.